Welcome to Our Catholic Faith Today. Before we dive into today's heartfelt conversations, let's pause and consider a simple but revolutionary command. Love thy neighbor. It's a verse almost everyone knows, one that captures the heart of Christian teaching, but also, let's be honest, tests us to our very limits. Why revisit this theme right now? Recent events in America and across the world remind us of just how deep our wounds are. Public protests, tragic violence, and heightened rhetoric are pulling friends, families, and entire communities apart, not only by action, but by how we respond, with compassion or, too often, with deeper anger.
Today, we'll reflect on two American stories that have made national headlines: the killing of Albert Sturgill Jr. at a Tennessee war memorial and the assassination of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. Both incidents are more than standalone tragedies. They ask us, as a community of faith or seekers, what love thy neighbor means when fear, fury, or mistrust seem to rule. Are we called to heal community wounds even when we feel hurt or threatened? Does neighbor love mean agreement or something deeper? A radical mercy that challenges the divisions of our time? In this age of snap judgments and social media storms, is it possible to not just talk about healing, but live it? We invite you, whether you're Catholic, Christian, or still searching, to wrestle with these questions today. Let's see what it would take to put love thy neighbor at the very center of our response to tragedy, difference, and division.
Let's begin our journey with the story of Albert Sturgill Jr. in Crossville, Tennessee. The Veterans Memorial Park is meant to honor those who served and sacrificed. For some in town, Sturgill became an unsettling figure, a solitary man, often walking the grounds, raising his middle finger to the American flag and war memorials. His protest, rooted in a mix of personal hurt and deep frustration with the government, was viewed as offensive, disrespectful, and infuriating, especially to veterans and their families. On August 22nd, events took a deadly turn. Several bystanders confronted Sturgill about his actions. Words escalated, and a physical struggle broke out involving Sturgill's wooden walking stick. In the chaos, Sturgill was shot in the neck and died on the memorial's grounds. Video of the incident spread rapidly, sparking outrage. Was this vigilante justice or an avoidable tragedy rooted in a divided culture? Community members mourned, debated, and questioned. Had anger and loyalty to symbols, however sacred, outpaced our commitment to human dignity? This story about Albert Sturgill Jr. reminds me of one of Jesus' most powerful parables, the lost sheep. Jesus said that a shepherd who has 100 sheep will leave the 99 safe in their pasture to go after the one that is lost. When he finds it, he rejoices more over that one than over the others who never strayed.
That parable is so striking, especially here. Sturgill was someone often viewed as an outsider, standing alone in protest. And whatever led him to that painful place, Jesus teaches us that the Good Shepherd values his life no less than any other. In God's eyes, even the one who is difficult, troubled, or misunderstood remains precious and worthy of pursuit and compassion.
So when we're tempted to write off or scapegoat those who seem furthest from our values or community, the gospel challenges us to do the opposite, to move toward them in mercy, and to remember that God's heart rejoices when even one lost soul is brought back with love, not condemnation.
Exactly. The story of the lost sheep isn't just about being found by God. It's a model for us on how to seek, care, and celebrate even those who have wandered furthest. In tragedies like this, we're reminded not just to grieve, but to see the image of God and the hope of redemption in every lost person. In Utah, another tragedy unfolded. One felt far beyond that state. Charlie Kirk, a polarizing conservative activist and founder of Turning Point Action, was shot and killed in front of thousands while answering a question at Utah Valley University. The shooting was precise, calculated, and led to an immediate manhunt. Within hours, social media was ablaze. Was this proof of spiraling political violence, ideological hatred come home to roost? Conservative voices invoked martyrdom and vengeance. Others saw in his death a symptom of deeper, unhealed social fractures. Both events moved swiftly from grief to controversy. Each side had its stories, its facts, its truths, played out in news cycles and online feeds. Yet the tragedies reveal a larger wound, a collective inability to grieve together, to seek even a small measure of understanding or mercy beyond us versus them.
These aren't just individual stories. They throw into sharp relief the challenge we face as a society, recognizing each life, even those we struggle with, as worthy of dignity and mercy.
Stepping back, it's clear these tragedies follow a painful new pattern in American life. Violence increasingly erupts in public, at parks, college campuses, street corners, places once considered safe or sacred.
What's more, these acts are loaded with symbolism: protests at war memorials, targeted shootings during political speeches. Each event gets woven into national debates over race, protest, political alignment, or respect for symbols. Suddenly, these aren't just personal losses, but become rallying points for anger and division.
And after each tragedy, the aftermath rarely unites us. Instead, social media and news coverage polarize communities further. Each incident becomes another flashpoint. Each victim, another symbol in a broader culture war.
You know, Maria, watching the firestorm of reactions after Charlie Kirk's death, how quickly lines were drawn and how often the moment was used to reinforce one side's moral standing, I couldn't help but think of a parable Jesus told. It's the one where two men go up to the temple to pray, one a Pharisee, the other a tax collector.
Right. The Pharisee stands tall, lists off his virtues, and thanks God he's not like other people. But the tax collector stands back, won't even lift his eyes, and prays quietly, "God, be merciful to me, a sinner."
Exactly. Jesus says it's the humble, repentant tax collector, not the self-righteous Pharisee, who goes home justified by God's mercy. And I think that's a vital challenge for all of us in moments like these. When tragedy strikes, especially in public or political life, it's tempting to see only the faults of others, to feel vindicated in our cause, or to lecture the other side. But Jesus calls us to humility, self-reflection, and a spirit of mercy for everyone, remembering that we all fall short.
It's sobering, isn't it? The parable reminds us not to use another's tragedy to build up our own sense of righteousness, or to further the distance between us and them. Instead, we're invited to pray, to mourn, and to approach the whole situation with a humble heart, trusting that God's justice and healing are bigger than our divisions.
In a polarized world, that humility, acknowledging our own blindness and limitations, can open the door to real dialogue, forgiveness, and maybe even a restoration of trust.
We invite you to reflect with us as we ask, is it possible to restore the humanity behind the headlines and the dignity behind the differences, even as public acts of violence make that call feel nearly impossible?
Absolutely. Jesus calls us first to self-examination. Are we harboring anger, resentment, or a vengeful spirit? Do we focus on the perceived faults of opponents in politics or public life, while ignoring the deeper need for healing, humility, and honesty in our own hearts and communities?
For Christians, and especially for Catholics, the answer is found not in shrinking from the challenge, but stepping directly into it. Jesus' command to love one's neighbor, and even one's enemies, makes no distinction for differences of ideology or offense.
And maybe if we can respond that way, the Church and all people of faith can be a force for peace and real dialogue, even in society's most polarized moments.
Love does not mean ignoring evil. It means responding with compassion, refusing to become what we despise, and standing for justice without giving in to hatred. Prayer, dialogue, and personal restraint all become spiritual tools for healing, both inner and societal.
So the question sharpens. How can we love our neighbor not simply in peace, but when violence and polarization tempt us to turn away, or see others only as threats or symbols rather than as persons?
And in the context of public violence or outrage, can community healing begin? One relationship, one new act of mercy at a time?
In this moment, Christ's call to love our neighbor goes from theoretical to urgent. How do we respond when the one in need of mercy is someone whose actions or words we find hurtful or threatening? As we grapple with these tragedies and the polarization they reveal, we have to ask, as Catholics, how are we called to move forward, authentically, faithfully, and in hope? The Church proposes a roadmap rooted in forgiveness, reconciliation, and practical peacemaking.
Pope Francis is right. Violence leads to more violence. We must break this cycle through forgiveness and reconciliation. In this moment, Catholics are called not just to lament or debate, but to love boldly, pray constantly, and build real pathways to peace, trusting always that God's grace can renew hearts and heal what seems impossible. Practical tools? Practice gentle, honest speech. Mentor young people. Support victims of violence or exclusion. Use resources in the parish for outreach, nonviolence, and interfaith encounter. Let's move into a deeper reflection as we ask, is it even possible in moments like these to restore humanity and dignity across the divides?
So as we move into our deeper conversation, we're not just asking, how do we love our neighbor in times of peace? But, how do we love our neighbor when public violence keeps forcing us to take sides or tempts us to see others only as symbols of an ideology, of a cause, or of a threat? Forgiveness, the Church teaches, isn't about excusing evil or forgetting pain. It's about letting God's grace free us from hatred. Through the sacrament of reconciliation, honest conversation, and a commitment to making things right, we open the door to personal and social healing.
Forgiveness isn't about excusing injustice. Pope Francis and the U.S. bishops urge us to break cycles of violence by learning to forgive, open our hearts in prayer, and repair relationships at every level. The sacrament of reconciliation, honest dialogue, and concrete acts of repair invite both individual and societal healing.
Forgiveness must become practice, not concept. When families publicly forgive those who have wronged them, or when communities reach out in dialogue after violence, it is a lived testimony that cycles of hate can be interrupted.
The Church gives us a radical direction. At its heart is a call to forgiveness and reconciliation, not pretending the harm didn't happen, but choosing to break the cycle of violence through mercy, prayer, and concrete action. History gives us powerful examples, like St. John Paul II forgiving his would-be assassin, and families who find strength to offer forgiveness even in the darkest moments.
Listeners, have you ever struggled to forgive or connect after hurt or anger? What role has faith played in those moments?
It starts with recognizing every person's dignity, even those we fear or despise. We're called to build a culture of life, publicly standing against violence, bigotry, and anything that denies the sanctity of human life. It's a witness rooted in Christ's own example.
As we reflect, remember, love thy neighbor isn't a command for easy times. It's a calling for the broken moments, the seasons when love is hardest.
None of this is possible on human strength alone. Prayer, especially the Eucharist, fuels this difficult journey. In Mass, we receive Christ's peace and ask for the courage to be agents of true reconciliation in the world.
Peacemaking is practical. The U.S. bishops and Pope Francis urge us to practice gentle speech, organize for healing, and advocate for justice, not just at church, but in our neighborhoods and public life. It might mean mentoring youth, providing a safe space at the parish, or standing with those who suffer from hate and exclusion. In the wake of Charlie Kirk's murder, so much of the reaction, online and in real life, has been outrage, blame, and quick judgment. It reminds me of Jesus' words. Why do you see the speck in your brother's eye, but fail to notice the plank in your own? But this isn't about calling out someone else's faults. Jesus' parable asks all of us, whatever our politics, to pause and look inward before we point outward, to recognize how easy it is to only see wrongdoing or extremism on the other side and not reflect on how our own reactions, words, or assumptions might fuel division.
That's exactly it. Jesus isn't telling us to ignore wrongdoing, but to remove the plank of pride or judgment from our own eyes before we try to address the wrongs of others. When tragedy strikes, whether it's the murder of someone with whom we agree or disagree, the Christian witness is to mourn, to pray, and to work for justice, but always with humility and charity at the center.
We must also recognize every person's dignity, even those we fear or disagree with. Publicly, Catholics are called to fight violence and bigotry by laying the groundwork for a true culture of life. That means advocacy for just policies, but even more, small, grassroots commitments to bridge divides in neighborhoods and parishes.
As we prepare to close today's episode, let's return to one of Jesus' best-known and most challenging parables. When asked, "Who is my neighbor?" Jesus told the story of a man attacked by robbers, left half dead on the road. Religious leaders saw him and passed by. But a Samaritan, someone considered an outsider and even an enemy, was moved by compassion. He bandaged the man's wounds, carried him to safety, and paid for his care.
The lesson wasn't simply to help when it's easy or safe, but to extend mercy to those most vulnerable, different, and even those with whom we disagree. Jesus concludes, "Go and do likewise." In a world bruised by violence, division, and indifference, whether in our towns, our politics, or our daily lives, the Good Samaritan asks us to cross every boundary of difference and fear for love and mercy.
We've discussed difficult stories, looked at faith's response to conflict and controversy, and challenged ourselves with questions about forgiveness and humility. As we go, let's carry the Samaritan's example into our week. Maybe there's someone in need, physically, emotionally, or spiritually, right on our doorstep, whom God asks us to see and serve.
Neighbor love isn't selective. It demands a mercy and courage that reaches beyond tribe, prejudice, and habit. In times of outrage, tragedy, or confusion, the parable reminds us, it's mercy, not judgment, that makes us true neighbors and followers of Christ.
May we go and do likewise. Thank you for joining our Catholic faith today. May God's peace and compassion be with you this week.
And above all, let prayer anchor every action. Through the Eucharist, Christ nourishes us and sends us into the world to be real agents of healing, reconcilers even in the most divided times.
Send us your thoughts by email.
We'd love to hear from you, our listeners. Here are some questions to bring today's teaching home. What does love thy neighbor mean for you in tough times? Have you seen or practiced forgiveness or empathy after a tragedy? How do you think Christians should respond to violence with a political edge? What practical steps, prayer, dialogue, outreach, could spark healing after public hurt?
Let's build a dialogue rooted in faith, mercy, and real hope. Thank you for reflecting with us. If today's discussion challenged or inspired you, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Remember, loving your neighbor isn't just a command. It's a pathway to healing our hearts and communities. Stay with us for more stories, faith, and hope on Our Catholic Faith Today.